Hello, hello, hello. Are you all still awake? Yes. Good. We have a lot of stuff to get through. Hello, I'm Emily. I'm the lead game designer at League of Geeks, and I've been the lead game designer at EA before and at Big Point in Germany, and I've been managing creative teams for 8, 9 years now. It's been a while. And being good at managing people in general, being a good lead, is really important to me. I deeply care about the relationship we establish between our teams and making sure that we have the best creative collaboration that we can have and that we empower every team member to do the best work they've ever done. So I decided last year to start actually giving tools to people to make sure that happens more often. So this year I'm giving you more cards to add to your people management deck. If you're curious about what we talked about last year, the video is on YouTube from last GCAP. You do not need to have seen last year's talk to understand this one. But it is worth noting that if last year was Cards Against People Mismanagement 101, we've now kind of leveled up. And the concepts that we're going to go through today are a little bit more complex, but just as helpful. So you may have seen memes like these going around, because the reality of it is that being a good leader, being a good people manager is really, really hard. Who here has had a boss? Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. Who has had a leader? Awesome. So in case this isn't clear, you do not want to be a boss, you want to be a leader. Okay? Let's not get confused here. The big difference between these two people, between developing people and using people, is really people management skills. It's your ability to help people grow. Who here is currently managing people? Awesome. Who here aspires to be managing people? Awesome. Who here is currently being mismanaged? Less awesome, but hopefully some of the tools we have here will help you manage upwards, will help you help your manager help you. Yes. Because a lot of the time when we talk about soft skills versus hard skills, this is how we picture the difference between the two. The hard skills are the teachable, specific abilities like knowing to code, knowing to draw, knowing to do all of these technical things, whereas the soft skills are often perceived as something that is innate, kind of nebulous and hard to define, and kind of magical. And I've purposefully color-coded these as blue and pink because most of the time, people expect women to have better soft skills. This is my feeling about this. And I feel this very strongly. Thank you. Thank you. So, the reality of it is that the soft skills are not teachable only because people have put it in a too hard basket. If women have been socialized to have better soft skills, that translates to we have been taught by society that this is how you interact with people. So it is teachable. It is an ability that you can develop. And while we may not have numbers and clear data to measure can you soft skill line of codes, we have a lot of vocabulary to describe bad soft skills. So saying that it's nebulous and not well defined is just because you haven't put the time in to actually define it and understand it. And a lot of very smart people have done so. And yes, it is in the too hard basket. So when thinking about building a deck of people management cards, it's kind of a monster deck. Magic the Gathering comes to mind. It is complex and can take a lot of time. So my goal with this talk is really to raise your awareness of the tools that exist and the frameworks that exist that you can research and learn more about on your own. My goal is to show you situations where certain frameworks could be useful so that you know that there's resources for you out there and you're at least aware of what you don't know or have a bit of an idea of things you can research. And in my opinion, if the only thing I managed to teach today or help you with today is that soft skills are teachable and you can develop those abilities, I am happy. So I had to focus this year's cards into a select number few. And when thinking about lighting the way, this is what came to mind when thinking about game development. It's just a very tumultuous waters of creativity with hidden rocks and fears, and hopefully the leader at the front in the thick, making sure that no one flips over and drowns. It's scary, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of tools that we need in order to be able to bring a team together and go to that destination and light the way forward. So, for me, essential skills to light the way include communication, the ability to understand what you're being told and to be understood, because you can't actually lead anyone anywhere if you're not speaking the same language. Motivation, this is what makes people want to brave the tumultuous waters and keep going when the going gets tough. And guidance, this is how you make sure that the people on the team can brave the tumultuous waters, that they have the knowledge, the confidence to keep moving forward. So that's what we're going to cover today. And communication on its own could be several talks. So when I say that we're only touching the surface of what I consider to be super useful and the tools that I rely on constantly, I truly mean it. So, communication. Becoming your own babblefish. It's really easy to presume that because we all here speak English, we actually speak the same language. We don't. Everyone uses language slightly differently, processes different types of information differently, gets hung up on different words for different reasons. So taking for granted that just because you share the language is enough is actually selling yourself short. For those who saw my talk last year, we covered the tool of why, which is about giving context to make sure everyone is on the same page before having a conversation. The flags to use regularly to kind of signpost all of these moments. And the third-person camera, which is about looking at yourself from an external point of view to understand what your bias is and what may be causing friction in this conversation. The tools that we're going to cover today are more about analyzing all of that and really understanding the leanings of certain people and making the most of your communication. So card number 1. Picture this situation for a second. You have to talk to Bob, and you're feeling drained before you're even getting started. It's always hard. It always takes twice as long as it should. It's never getting the results that you want. Or as soon as you start that conversation, you feel defensive, you feel attacked, you know it's going to be hard. You feel like they're not hearing you, or you don't understand them. It's a mess. This is probably because you and Bob have different communication styles. So, this is a model that is very easy to Google. There's plenty of information out there. It is abstracted to the DISC matrix. So, different people communicate in different ways. Some are more dominant, influencers, steady, or conscientious. We're going to go through those in a second. The idea here is that you should know what your natural leaning is and understand what the other person's natural leaning is and try to build a bridge so that you two can communicate. Don't get me wrong, people do not stay in neat little boxes, and you shouldn't try to make them stay in neat little boxes. Everyone is a mix of all of the styles, and will also change communication styles based on the situations they're in. But we all have kind of a natural state that feels quite comfortable to us, and other ways that requires energy from us. And mastering those styles does a few really awesome things. So the first thing is really building bridges between you and the person that you want to talk to make sure you're both having effective conversations. But it can also help you translate in team meetings between two people who are speaking in a different style, and make sure that they don't start hating each other just because they don't understand each other. It helps foster really clear, efficient conversations, because you're adapting to the message that the person is the most likely to hear. It improves perception of yourself, because if you're having a hard time chatting with Bob, Bob is having a hard time chatting with you. And understanding how you may be perceived, depending on how you express yourself, can help you make sure that you don't inadvertently have a bunch of blind spots that aren't being covered, and that you adapt to make your team feel secure in what you're saying. And it can really prevent resentment. Because when you don't feel heard, or when you get messages that are confusing to you, it starts taking a toll over time. So what are these styles? As I said, there's a bunch of different information on Google. Everyone slices it a little bit different. This is the summary that is the most helpful to me. So we have two axes here: people who are task-oriented, all the way to being more people-oriented. And then some communicators prefer stability, consistency, while others get excited about all the new stuff. So let's start with our dominant. The dominant communication style tends to be very decisive, direct, and self-confident. They're about facts and data and getting results. They value competency and independence. So when they get started, it's like, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, these are the facts, this is how we get results. That can come across as quite cold and insensitive, and be quite daunting for certain team members to kind of just get that download of this is what you're doing all back to back in a second. And also, they're more likely to rush to making decisions instead of allowing for every voice in the room to be heard and discuss the details of what we're doing, because they want a result. But when you rush to result and you don't actually consider the problem, your solution may be all wrong and you'll not get the result you want. Then on the excitement, but towards people, you have the influencer. The person who's super outgoing, persuasive, optimistic, is all about collaborating and expressing yourself and having all of those big, grand ideas. Someone who speaks free-form, jumps between concepts, and doesn't necessarily go from A to B to C. They want to go from A to Z in one stretch. They're talking a lot in big pictures and are most likely to get bored if you get too deep into the detail. They may come across as unfocused and impulsive, and may have problems following through because they get excited about the new thing or how they can help someone else. And they may rush to act without having all of the facts. So when you speak to an influencer, you want to speak from a place of emotion and big ideas. If you start with the details and only speak of the details, they log off. They just stop listening. And that's very different from a dominant who wants the facts, not too much in detail, but focused on how do we get the result we want. So you can imagine that even between those two styles that are both on the excitement side of the spectrum, there's miscommunication that can happen. Because one of them is busy about how will the people feel about this, and the other one is like, how is this going to make money? I'm being extreme, but it's that sort of difference. Then on the people but stable side, we have the steady type of communicator, someone who's consistent and patient and very, very thorough. They try to get consensus and moderation. They want everyone to support each other, work together. They value being loyal and stable and cooperating. The challenge with them is that they can come across as really reluctant to embrace change and new ideas, and somewhat indecisive until everyone in the room has had a chance to ponder and voice what they feel. On the flip side of that, they can be overly accommodating and potentially put themselves in difficult situations because they want consensus and moderation and everyone to be cooperating and happy. They want peace. They are your peacemaker. So when talking about someone who's on that side of the equation, you want to make sure that you take the time. You don't rush the conversation. You talk about the impact on the people as a priority. And you really don't try to force the one idea that hasn't been discussed. You need to allow time for deliberation. So imagine for a second that you put a dominant and a steady in the same room. They do not speak the same language, even if they both speak English. Then you have the consensus one. This is the person who's very systematic, very cautious and logical. You go from A to B to C to D because that's been proven to work. And this is how you do the things. They think a lot about the details and the sequence of things and how do we actually get to this big idea that you have. They value being very accurate and at a high quality standard. So especially when they're chatting with an influencer who's like, all of these big dreams, they may come across as super critical and somewhat isolated from other people because they care about getting the task done. They may have analysis paralysis because they want all of the details, all of the facts, full understanding of the problem before they can actually start taking the steps. And they may have problem delegating because this is how the thing is done and I know how to do the thing and this is how it's gonna work. So again, you put the contentious one with the influencer, they're gonna have a really hard time understanding each other. So our job as leaders, as managers, is to understand this and to be able to understand our own leanings and adapt. And depending on the situation, adapt as well. My natural leaning is towards the influencer / steady. This is where I live. I like big ideas, big concepts. I speak in abstract. I jump around. You should see me prepping slides. It's hilarious. But I'm very thorough, and I enjoy cooperation almost above everything. So I'll jump between the two, but if you put me in a room where it's mostly influencers who are all busy with their big ideas and we have a deadline, I will take the role of the consensus one, even if I hate it. And it's not really me, and it takes me a lot of energy to do it. Because what's important to me is that the team works together. And if you're freaking out the team with your big ideas, you better sit down and make them reasonable. So I'm just sharing this to give you a clear example of how we just navigate between different things. It may depend on the social situation. You may not speak this, you don't speak the same way to your mom as you do your coworkers. It may depend on the team that's around you, but everyone has kind of a natural way that they feel the most comfortable with and use the less energy to perform, and other ways that they can communicate. That brings me to my second card, which is kind of an additional layer on this whole conversation piece. And that is the expectation tendencies. So I want you to imagine situations where you've received guidance and it was expressed to you in a way that you understood, but you felt very stressed out by the guidance you received, or you got bored because there wasn't enough guidance for you to follow. This is kind of an additional layer above everything that you communicate. This is a guidance card, but is also so deeply embedded in the way you communicate to the team and how you drive results from the team and get them to work together. that I consider it a power-up to the style of communication. So understanding who has what expectations, I've put this vase/profile image because we're all familiar with it. People see different things at first look. This is exactly what expectations and reaction to expectations are about. And when you understand that and you know the tendencies of your team, you can then manage those expectations and know how to voice guidance. And that allows you to do a few things. The first one being to pick the right support structure for each individual so that you don't think that you're guiding them when you're actually stressing them out. It prevents inadvertently setting someone up to fail by giving them the wrong kind of guidance or directives that they're unlikely to react well to. It can also help lower the stress of your individual team member, because when they get the kind of expectation that motivates them and get them to act, they're less worried about doing the right thing because they know they're doing the right thing. So in the long run, it increases efficiency. So those 4 tendencies are from this book by Gretchen Rubin. I haven't read the book itself. I've read a lot of articles about the book. It's on my to-read list. I'm going to get to it, I swear. 4 key types. We're going to go through them one by one. The first one is the upholder. So this is someone who reacts just as well to what they expect of themselves, and they have expectations toward themselves, and to what other people, like a manager, expects from them. Those are equally important. They don't feel particularly stressed either way. This is just how expectations work. If I don't have external people giving me expectations, I'm going to pick my own. And if other people give me expectation, I can moderate mine to match theirs. So they're very self-directed and really great at following through on goals you've agreed on. Because once they have the expectation, they're like, okay, cool, we're just doing it, that's fine. However, they'll struggle to adapt to changing and unpredictable goals. If you keep moving the goalposts, they're like, I want to do what you're asking of me, and you keep changing it. And they may have problems delegating as well. If you contrast that with the questioner, this is someone who may come across as an upholder, and react positively to outer expectations that they agree with. But the main thing is that at the end of the day, only the expectations that they have for themselves really matter. And if outer expectations don't align with what they expect for themselves, they will flat out not do it. I am that person. I will come across as an upholder if I respect you, if you respect me, if we have a relationship of trust, if our goals are aligned, you will totally believe that I'm an upholder. I'm not. The minute you lose my trust, I'm sorry. It's done. It's more important for me to do good work by my standards than to have a job. It's literally as extreme as that. Questioners always look for efficiencies, better solutions. They never take any outer expectation of how things should work for granted. They question everything. But that means that they will really struggle and push back hard on what you ask if you don't give them a good reason to do it. They need context. They need to understand, why is this an expectation that I should take on board? You can't just tell them to do the thing. They will rebel. Then you have the obliger. This is someone who doesn't have big ambitions, aspirations, expectations towards themselves. They're more than happy to do what's expected of them. They're people who execute extremely well on clear directives. This is the person where you give them a to-do list, it's going to be done in 2 seconds flat. It's just no questions, it's going to get done. But if they don't have that external accountability, if you leave them to themselves and don't give them any clear directions, they will struggle. And they will struggle pushing back as well if you give them too much. They may want to meet everything so much that they drive themselves into the ground. And then you have the rebel. The one who just does whatever they want and doesn't care about what is expected of them, and doesn't have any strong expectations towards themselves either. They're very go with the flow, the trend, the thing of the moment, what they feel is important. They're great at thinking outside the box. They are super flexible and very driven in their own way. However, they may struggle with priorities and deadline and require a little bit more shepherding towards doing things that are important first, or at least important for the company, because they won't naturally uphold that. They'll need reinforcement. None of these are wrong. They're all great. They all have great, fantastic strength that makes your team better, just like the different communication styles, but understanding them is important to how you're managing those people. Number 3, tell me if you've ever had a conversation where you feel the other person is just not listening. It's like, yeah, it's like they cut you off, or they already have the answer to the first sentence you said and clearly you haven't heard the second one. You may have been that person who's thinking about your reaction instead of listening fully to what the other person is saying. This is time for some active listening. Now, active listening is all about focusing on the other person, being open to being wrong, that's the hardest part, and engaging with what they say, allowing them to surprise you. Essentially, switch on your ears, silence your reactions, give space for the other person to tell you what they think. Actively listening shows you care at the very baseline. You care enough about this person to give them your time. And that fosters trust, that you'll be there when they have something to say, which may or may not be something you want to hear. It can help alleviate a lot of concerns, because sometimes the only thing that is needed to address a concern is a good conversation about it. For it to be heard and noted and acknowledged, it doesn't always even require an action plan to follow up. It can allow you to gather key information about what's going right, what's going wrong, what are the rocks hidden under the surface of the water that your team has spotted and you haven't yet. And it encourages all future contributions. When people feel like every conversation with you is positive and productive, they will keep having conversations with you. So how to actively listen / receive feedback? Because it's the same thing. First thing, you need to be ready to do a couple of things. First, you need to be ready to drop your armor. All of those reactions of anxiety, worry, preparing a reaction, they are all defense mechanisms that prevent you from hearing what you're being told. If it's a super positive chat session, that's not that hard. But when you get to hearing feedback or challenges to your plan that you may not be ready to hear, your armor's gonna kick in. You need to be ready to consciously go, this is not about me. Let's chat about the problem. You need to be ready to get your ass kicked, because you will be wrong. We all are. That's okay. If your team doesn't feel comfortable telling you when you're wrong, your team is going to be less efficient. Problems are going to fester, things are going to go wrong. You need to be ready to focus on the person. If you're hungry, if you're tired, you're not going to be ready to focus on the person. It's okay to reschedule a meeting if you're not actually ready to listen. You need to be wholly present, not think about the next meeting, the next schedule, the next task, the next thing, and not thinking about how you're going to react to what they're saying. Just be in the moment and be patient. It's okay for some harder conversations to have silence in them until the person can speak up. Make sure when you want to show that you're actively listening that you sit by the person. Ideally, not on opposite side of the table, kitty corner, side by side. If you're looking at a thing that you're working through, sit close by. It may sound silly, but sitting opposite in a table, like, puts this tug of war back and forth situation. It doesn't feel as welcoming. Allow for time and silence for people to wrap up their thoughts, to find the courage to speak up if it's a difficult conversation. Ask questions about the things that you're told. Dig in, try to find the source. Really make sure that you understand what is being told to you. Clarify when you don't. That's how you show that you're engaged with what they're saying. Another tool is to reflect what you're told. So if someone explains to you an idea, you summarize it back, you say it back to the person. That shows that you've actually been paying attention. And then can lead to your questions, your clarification, whatever the next step. And once the person is done talking, summarize the key learnings from this session. And then from that point on, if that needs to turn into action points or another meeting or whatever changes to the plan that needs to happen, move into that after you've formally kind of closed the active listening portion. Don't try to troubleshoot before you've heard everything. And then if you come up with a solution or a change or something, make sure you follow up. And thank the person, especially if it was a difficult conversation. Thank them for having the courage to speak to you. And don't be mistaken, you sitting still and actively listening is an act of courage as well when it's a difficult conversation. So it's not easy, but you can do it. I have faith. Now, you've been the best active listener because you took everything that I said to heart. Don't undo your good work by saying, I understand, but. Please, just kick butt out of everything. I'm going to nerd out on language for a second. But essentially cancels everything that comes before when you're having a tough conversation or even discussing an idea. The very nature of but and its function in a sentence is to modify the previous statement. And by default, it implies that the but is more important than the previous statement. So it can really 100% undo all of the work that you've done, and people can really get hung up on it. So instead of using but, use yes and. This is what Pixar calls plussing. So listening to the idea and adding to it. By using yes and, you acknowledge the contribution and treat it as equal in value to your own thoughts. You don't inadvertently infer a difference in value by your use of language. And usually when you do a yes and, you're more likely to keep the conversation going, where a but tends to just shut it down. It really encourages collaborative problem solving so that the person is part of finding a solution and keeps chatting with you and increasing the momentum towards a solution. Let's look at that in practice. I hear you, but I disagree. This sounds like something normal to say, but to a person who's just shared something they're concerned about, it sounds disingenuous and dismissive of what they've just said. I hear you and I disagree is still not great. But if you follow that up and you keep the conversation going, it's still better than but. I'm not recommending that you say, I hear you and I disagree. This is not a great. But it's still better. Now, let's look at a better statement to begin with. I get it, but I think that there's a better way to implement this, whatever the rest of the sentence is. I get it, and I think there may be a better way to do this. Maybe we can switch it, blah, blah, blah. You keep the conversation going. But you can see that just changing one word, the I get it is now acknowledged. I've heard you, and I respect what you've said. And you don't even have to use and specifically, just don't use but. I think it's a great idea, but I have concerns, is a lot easier to accept if it's actually, I think it's a great idea. I have concerns. You've acknowledged the idea, you've given it its full value, and you're adding to it. And you can propose solutions, or, you know, I think it's a great idea, I have a few suggestions. Is better than I think it's a great idea, but I have a few suggestions. So really, it sounds silly, but is your enemy. It's okay to moderate your own statements, but avoid doing it to others. Card number 5. You've probably been in a situation before where something just doesn't click. Like, your manager is nice and, you know, friendly and everything, but you just can't trust them. Something just isn't quite right. It's usually because they're not enough of an action hero. Verbal communication and everything we just talked about is not the only way you communicate. Ever. And putting all of your words into actions is what builds trust, safety, and momentum in change. This is how people feel that you have integrity and that they will respect you for it. And it just starts by you regularly collating action points and actually completing them. And it, as I said, putting words into action really shows integrity and reliability. And those are very important, so that when you've done the active listening session, people feel like it led to positive change, that it didn't just go into a black suggestion box to die. It reinforces what you say. When you say to people, oh, we should work more this way or that way, if you are not putting it in practice yourself, people are just not gonna make the effort. It demonstrates all of those ideal behaviors, and when you start going and addressing action points from complaints that people have brought to you, it creates a momentum in improvements that encourages people to keep coming to you, but also makes them less concerned about future problems and diminishes the fear on the team, because whatever comes, we can talk about it and the manager is going to take care of it. It gives weight to all of your future words. That's as simple as that. I used this meme last year instead of the one I used at the beginning, which is a very popular one. What you can see here is that a boss tells everyone what to do. A leader shows everyone what to do. There's any writer in the room, show, don't tell, is a very common recommendation. This is what Brené Brown refers to as being the man in the arena. It's important to be part of the journey, part of the process, to be shown in action, doing things that you think are important. And it's much more valuable for people to get, you know, critical feedback and stuff like that from someone who is doing the thing, who is deep in the project with them, not some external force who doesn't understand anything of what's happening. It is arguably better, actually not arguably, it is better for you to say that you do not have the time to do something, or that you can't get around to doing X, or to ask for a delay and to ask for patience, than to say, sure, I'll fix it, and not do it. People understand that you are busy, that you have limitations, you are not superhuman, and you can message that. It is more destructive to your credibility if you keep promising and not delivering. So make sure that you show. That said, don't take action on things that are in someone else's control. Don't do it. Refer to the bullseye from my previous talk for more details on that. Just don't do it. because then they feel like you're overriding them and it's evil. Motivation, helping everyone get out of bed. That may sound like oversimplifying it, but really that's what motivation does. It gets people happy on the project, it gets more shit done, it helps provide focus because you're doing the thing and you're feeling good about it. SMART goals, from my previous talk, and the bullseye as well, help with motivation. Having clear goals that are achievable, time-bound, that we keep track of, that we're partners in achieving, and having a clear area of things that I can control are key to me being motivated. Now, you've probably been in a situation where you've been just sticking to habits when your heart isn't in it and you're not feeling it anymore and you're kind of underperforming and you kind of don't know why. Something's just not working. You may have noticed people on your team falling into that. This is often because they're disengaged. And I came up with my own tool to analyze disengagement because I'm a game designer and I care about these things. I call it the E=MC². This is a tool to break down problems in engagement to help craft an environment where everyone can do their best work. You can fill out the matrix yourself or have the other person fill it so that they get more self-aware as well. And if you find yourself getting disengaged, do yourself a favor, fill out the matrix for yourself. So analyzing engagement helps demystify morale issues and kind of put a little bit of labels on things so you can actually have an action plan. It highlights clear problems. It leads to actionable solutions, things that you can put in practice and solve it, as opposed to be like, things aren't gelling. And it exposes the roots of productivity challenges. I'm going to speed through a little bit because I still have a lot of stuff and we're running out of time. So looking at what constitutes engagement, there's two main factors: being motivated about what you're doing, having control over what you're doing. If you're super motivated but you can't make any impact, you're going to disengage. If you can make a lot of impact but you're not motivated, you're going to disengage. And there's two layers to both of these things: the internal motivation that the person has, the intrinsic feelings of motivation and control, and then the external things that the environment enables or disables. So within internal motivations, what matters to the person? Their personal goals, their role within the team, their career aspirations, their interests. How can we tap into all of the things that matter to them? And their perception of their own control. Do they have a great, well-defined sandbox of things where they own this, a feature, a part of the development? What are their strengths? What are their stress or insecurities? Are they currently in a role where they don't have all of the skills they need and need training? And feeling insecure about those responsibilities. Externally, what's in it for them? What is the improvement or project they care about? What is the support available to them? Are they the work-life balance, the career progression, the recognition, the salary, all of the things that you as a manager can provide to help the motivation? And then what can they influence? What do they not directly control but can contribute to with their ideas, their feedback, their opportunities for growth, promotion, and all of that? These things need to be fulfilled. It's how you feel that you have a future in the company, that it's worth for you investing your time. It's how you feel happy with the role you have now. It's how you see yourself doing this and are motivated to keep doing it. If one of those boxes doesn't contain anything or contains a lot of negative things, that hones in on things that you can actually do to help. Is it training? Is it a clearer career path? Is it better salary? Or are you working too much overtime? Like, it's all things that you can discuss once you have a bit of an analysis of what happens here. Our last category is guidance. Nurturing people into doing their best work. You want your team to reach their goals, your goals, personal goals, all of the goals, just smash them out of the park. It makes them feel good about themselves. It makes them more efficient. This is sometimes called coaching. It's helping people, supporting them, helping them grow instead of using them, as per the first meme. One-on-ones from my previous talk are a great small meeting that can help guide people. Just sitting with them, one-on-one, 30 minutes every fortnight, and let them tell you what they want to do. As a manager, you will have to provide guidance and coaching to people. And you may realize that you spend too much time just helping someone and it's not happening. Or you may find yourself thinking, oh, these people are so good at their job, I don't need to worry about them. Both of these things are wrong. Both of these things are a problem. You need to sit down and use the 9-box matrix. So the 9-box matrix is about creating a strategy, prioritizing, and assessing suitability of your guidance for different people. It's about assessing everyone's performance and ambition to make sure you account for both when you're planning how you will guide this person and how they will grow. Now, this was originally created to assess companies, not people. And it can be really easily misused to put very annoying labels on people. So, do not do this as paint by numbers. Actually care. I know it's hard. Actually care. These are people. There's no wrong box here. There is only a way to take a lens to look at potential problems, challenges, or ways to improve and support people. And over the course of a career, we will all be in all of these boxes at one point or another. So just because you've put a person in a box one time, reassess consistently. Never keep that label on for too long. So thinking with those boxes ensures everyone is in the right role, informs individual guidance strategies, helps prevent misplaced energy, and flags necessary contingencies like we may need to replace this person, either because they need to be promoted because they're bored or because they're just not a good fit. So the 9-box framework basically has 2 axes of performance, how well are they doing the job, and then growth or ambition. How driven are they? How much more do they want to do? Growth doesn't mean leadership. Some people want to grow quote unquote hard skills. Not everyone wants to ascend to a lead position. That's not necessarily their career goals. And being low on growth or ambition isn't a bad thing. Maybe you just started a family. Maybe you want just a steady job and your growth and ambition is in other sectors of your life. This is not bad. That said, I start with the difficult box. So someone on your team who's at low growth and low performance is a risk. And if there's no momentum of that person improving, you're actually doing your team a disservice by cuddling this person. And you're doing this person a disservice as well, because usually they know they're not doing well. So you want to make sure that you spend some time supporting, try to find performance management, and help them along, grow their skills, get them motivated. But if you've used all of the tools and nothing is changing, they may need to be replaced. And yes, that may mean having the very hard conversation of firing this person. Or if your company is big enough, that may mean moving them into a different role. They are not a good fit. And no matter how hard you try, at some point you have to let go. This is super hard, but all of the team feels it when someone of the team is underperforming and everyone has to pick up the slack. The next layer are challenging, but not as much. So someone who's, medium in terms of ambition and low performing, maybe just new to this role. They're motivated and inexperienced, they're probably teachable if you tap into that motivation. Support them, coach them, get them to grow. Someone who's a medium performer and not particularly ambitious or on a steep growth trajectory, they're super performant, but they're stagnant at the moment. So you may try to motivate them and get them engaged, give them focus and support. This is usually a significant portion of really big companies. It's not bad, but you may want to shepherd them into being a little bit more active. Now, this layer are some people that are at a great place. So the first one, even though they're low performer, they're super driven. They want to learn. They're in it to win it. They're here. So you can have good, candid conversations, sometimes hard one, about their performance, and give them challenges and keep them moving forward and learning. There's also a chance that this person is in the wrong role or paired with the wrong manager. They're not in an environment that enables them to perform well, or there's something going on in their life that makes them unfocused. So you need to dig into this one a little bit and build that relationship and make sure you understand what's happening here, because they're motivated. You don't want that to die. The one in the middle, who's at half performance, half growth on the scale, I say half performance, and that sounds really bad, but it's not. Like, they're reliably doing the things that need to be done. They're a key player on your team. You want to motivate them, reward them. They need a balance of knowns and challenges. They want to keep things steady, but a little bit challenging. The expert is that invaluable pillar that just smashes through stuff, that you want to make sure that you retain and reward, because they're doing just fantastic work. They're a go-to resource. They're really good. They are not interested in doing something else. They love what they're doing. They may resent you if you try to force them into leadership position, or if you try to force them to grow. So be careful of promoting your expert to being a lead and them missing really, really hard the work that they were doing and actually enjoyed. Then you have the next layer up. The rising star is this person who's like a good performer, very driven. They're on their way. They're definitely performing, and they may quit if you don't help them keep learning. So recognize what they're doing, develop them, make sure that you give them new goals and new things to pursue. Because they want to reach the top. And if you stop them, they're going to seek it elsewhere. The rock star is this very solid, reliably exceeding expectation kind of person. You want to challenge them and reward them. If they're not on a steady diet of challenges and new hard tasks that no one has done before, they're likely to go seek those challenges elsewhere. And then the last one, the shooting star, is the one who will not be on your team for long. And you need to accept that. It's the person who's overperforming, super driven, and like they are on the fast track. That's what they're doing. They want to grow, they want new challenges, and they need to be promoted, essentially. You need to find a spot for them where they're going to keep growing, or they will seek it elsewhere. This is what it boils down to. There's a limited time frame on this person. Oh, I'm out of time. 5 minutes to go through arguably the most important card. If you're sometimes unsure about how well you're doing, or you get empty praise or useless criticism, that's because the feedback isn't great. It's one of your jobs as a manager to provide good feedback. And while we often talk about negative feedback, there's actually positive feedback that is just as valuable. And this is why this is a hybrid of motivation and guidance. Because if you never give any feedback, people feel lost. They don't know if they're doing well. and they're going to disengage and stop being motivated. So take the time to provide positive reinforcement and constructive criticism so that everyone knows where they stand. This helps you build people's confidence. It encourages the desired behaviors. So when a person is doing a good thing and you reinforce that, it shows the rest of the team that they should do the thing as well. It supports improvement, and it creates clear standards for your team of what you want to strive towards. And at the end of the day, it shows you care. Whether it is positive reinforcement or constructive criticism, you care enough to say something. You've paid attention. So, giving meaningful feedback. Be ready to do a lot of the same things as active listening. Drop your armor, especially if you're going to do criticism. You have to be prepared to be wrong and to hear the person's side of the story and to moderate what you're thinking. Don't go into constructive criticism when you're angry. Just don't do it. Be candid. Especially negative feedback is a hard conversation. And if you sugarcoat it too much and you make your feedback unclear, you're actually being unkind. Because the person is going to walk out of there super confused. So, clarity. Be candid. Don't be aggressive. Be candid. Be prepared to be wrong. Be prepared to be patient and to provide factual details, precise examples. And that applies to both positive and negative feedback. When someone just tells you, oh, you're doing a good job, you're like, cheers. Like, did you actually notice what I did? When someone tells you that document you wrote was really great because the summary at the beginning made everything clearer, now that person has paid attention, and that positive feedback is actually touching. So when you provide feedback, make sure that you provide feedback soon after the event or the task or the behavior, whatever you need to provide feedback on. State your intention to provide feedback and check if the person is ready to receive it. So I want to talk to you, I want to help. If you're going to give negative feedback is good because it helps the person see that you're not adversarial. Refer to a specific task or behavior. I've had the feedback before of, Emilie, you're aggressive. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, do you have an actual example of me being aggressive that I can break down and analyze why I was perceived as aggressive? Because I know I don't want to be. And the person was like, oh, just in general. Like, I can't do anything with that but be angry. Also, yeah, sure, I think I can, I know the time that you may be referring to where I was aggressive. I was getting cursed at and criticized in front of my colleagues. Yes, I was aggressive in that particular instance because that behavior was not okay. So, specific tasks summarize the impact of that task or behavior, what it has done for the team, and ask for their thought. The feedback had been, Emilie, I want to help you. You're being perceived as aggressive. Really important to make a difference between the behavior and the person. You're aggressive, much less likely to be heard. You are perceived as aggressive. Your behavior makes you seem aggressive, much different. This makes the team reluctant to talk to you. What do you think? How do you think we can improve this? Discuss next steps with them, get them involved, and if when you ask for their thoughts, they tell you their side of the story and your feedback is wrong, adapt. Thank them for hearing you out and follow up if needed. You want to make sure you get that statement, that specific task, behavior, and summary short, so you get the person an opportunity to talk and for you to actively listen as soon as possible. And if you're doing positive feedback, you're only not doing the bottom part. You still want to be specific, state your intention, summarize the impact, because that makes it clear that you've noticed. And by all means, no matter almost no matter what. Critique in private. Praise in public. Check if the person is okay with it. Some people get really uncomfortable if you do it. Critique in private. The only exception to this is if someone is being abusive, then put them in their place in public. But anything else is not worth public humiliation. Show you care, critique in private. Quickly, some recommended reads. Snap a picture. Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. I went to her seminar earlier this year. It's fantastic. A lot about being a brave, courageous leader. Radical Candor by Kim Scott. She touches a lot on being candid, giving feedback, and that 9-box tool. And then The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. As I said, this is one of those books that I've read a lot of articles about, haven't read yet, is on my to-read list. This is me, Emily. You can find me on Twitter. I'll be watching the hashtag Cards vs. Peeps for a bit, if you have any questions or follow-up. I'm also keen to start a leadership book club. So if you want to join, there's a Google form. I'm from League of Geeks and we are hiring. So check out our careers website. If you have interest in design roles, we are currently hiring a technical game designer and a senior level designer, and we will be hiring more roles in the future. Book us on Meet to Match, say hi. And that's it. We have no time for questions. I'm way over time. But I will stick around for a bit, so if you want to ask any, I will be here. Thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate your time and active listening this late in the day.